Call this council meeting to order at 6 p.m. First of all, some of you may notice that there's only 3 members of council present tonight, Councillor Knox, Councillor Meyer, and myself. We have 1 councillor away and 1 is ill. However, after the recent resignation of Councillor Draycott, our quorum is now 3 members, so we are well within our ability to conduct this council meeting. I need a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on April 27th, 2022 be adopted as circulated.
Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have 1 delegation this evening. We have Asik Razak is here to present on the local vehicle for hire. There'll be 5 minutes for the presentation and then council will get a chance to ask questions of the presenter. The floor is yours, Mr. Razak.
Honorable Mayor and Honorable Council, thank you to provide me opportunity to represent for this delegation. The purpose for this delegation is a request. It's a small change, but this small change will give a big benefit for the whole community because right now I am working in this city almost from last 9 years as a taxi cab driver or shuttle driver, and I also own a business, Tulip Taxi. And my request is that we are facing a little problem to find out the driver for class 4 license. There is no doubt there's not enough drivers working, not only in my company, from any company for the class 4. So I am requesting to change, to get a driver permit, vehicle for hire driver permit, a single requirement. There is a class 4. Yeah, please change it from class 4 to class 5 to grant a vehicle for hire driver permit, because it was used to be before Bill 30. They was required from the Manitoba Public Insurance to have a class 4 to operate a taxi or ambulance or like a small bus. But right now, since this was the special, they did some change in Manitoba Public Incorporation Act back in 2019. So they remove this condition. So any person who has a valid class 5 driving license, they can operate taxi anywhere in Manitoba. And that's why City of Winnipeg also looking class 5 driver's license to operate a taxi or any vehicle for hire like the Uber or Tap car. Any passenger vehicle need a class 5 license, not class 4 driver's license. So why I am requesting City Hall to change this thing, because I'm getting too many complaints from the passengers. They are not getting service on time, because every month I'm getting over 5,000 calls. If city wants, I can provide City Hall the phone bill. They can check the record and they can talk personally to every passenger. They complain me, like especially for the elder peoples. I'm looking, one lady was waiting over 4 hours at the Quiche Gaming Center and nobody went there to pick her up. No driver went there because they said it was very busy, and now on that night there was only 2 drivers working at the night time at the city. And most of the time there looks like a lot of companies, but most of that companies are shut down. Like there was Nick Shuttle, they are not working. Every day there is only like 5 to 6 drivers working at daytime and 2 or 3 drivers working at night time. And these drivers from all the companies, not only from Tulip, Portage, Skyway, these from all drivers. Because how I know? Because I know I'm working here too, and I know how many cars on the road. So now there is no restriction from the Manitoba province to have a class 4 to operated taxis. So that's why this in this vehicle, driver's vehicle application, in the first condition they mention a valid provincial driver license applicable to use of the vehicle between as a
Mr.
class
Razak, just, you've got 1 minute left, okay?
Yeah. So, yeah, that is my only request. Like, yeah, please change. So if you change, the more people will be able to start more shuttle companies, or more people would be able to get this job from the local community. That's
Okay. Thank you. Questions from council? Councillor Knox?
You mentioned, was that 5,000 calls per month, Mr.
over 5,000 cars per month.
Per
yeah.
month, yeah.
Yes, in my company only.
Yeah.
In Tulip Taxi, and I was looking this morning, over 1,300 calls I received from 1st May to right now. And these people calling back, because somebody call like right now, and after 10 minutes they call again, and after 2 hours sometimes they call again because there is no cab. So these are the number of the calls. Yeah, and I can email later on to the city council like about this record.
Thank you. Is there barriers to get your class 4 license?
No
or
barrier
why?
from the province. Only this is from the city requirement.
No, but I mean, why, if somebody wants to be a driver, why they're not going to get their class 4 license?
The reason you can, I can mention, because to drive a taxi in Winnipeg is class 5, not class 4. And to drive Uber in Winnipeg is class 5, not class 4. And I noticed here when the COVID started, a lot of drivers moved from Ontario, Winnipeg to here because there was no business. So now, this month, like 3 drivers left the town. Now there is, the coming driver is less and moving drivers is more. That's the main reason.
And Winnipeg has a specialty course, though, for their taxi drivers, correct?
Only for the taxi driver, but not for the Uber drivers. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think so there is any special course anymore, because this application, I got it from their vehicle for hire department. And because I'm registered as a Uber driver in city of Winnipeg too.
Okay.
And they just activate me. I just gave them my class 4 license, passport, picture, and like the vehicle requirement and criminal record check and driver absence. That's everything I provide them.
So, yeah, if this changed, how many, for Tulip Taxi, how many drivers would you like to add to your fleet?
Honestly, I don't have not too much big concern to add too many drivers, but I would be happy, like especially older people I know, the marry, when they cannot make their appointment on time. At least some new shuttle companies will be open in this town from the local people. It was used to be a Casper shuttle. It was really good shuttle service. Now he's also not working. Probably like 2 or 3 hours, 5 hours he worked, but he was no. But I would be more happy, like the community will get service more fast. And the big issue, because it really hurts me when somebody charging from 17th Street to McDonald and back. I got some different complaint. Their drivers are charging more because I cannot work all night and all day. Sometimes I'm working, sometimes then I give phone to the other driver. And at the night time, this driver charge more. So then it will come more competition, so they will not charge too much money too. So it will really affect everything.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship, and just a couple of comments and then just one question. Just so I'm clear, what you're asking is that if the if the city was to reduce the requirement to go from a class 4 to a class 5, you're suggesting that that would be an improvement in quality of service and the amount of service that would happen in Portage? Is that what you're asking that for?
That's right. That's right. It will improve the service because the people will the main. Honestly, I told you why I filed because this was the handy woman, Mary, and she did not get a service for 4 hours at night time at Quiche. And next day she told me she live on the Rotary. Yeah, and next day she told me this is the long waiting, and I noticed whenever I try to send a job to driver, they said they are already busy. They have their own personal calls, and so if there is more driver, it doesn't matter from my company. If somebody from this community open more shuttle companies, so it should be at least they will get service little faster. And there should be easier criteria to hire the new drivers for any shuttle company. This will give the benefit to the whole community because you can understand when everywhere, even though right now all over Canada, not only from here, in Ontario they also use G license, just a class 4 license to drive Uber or taxi. Because since 2018, lot of things changing, when the Uber came, every requirement they are giving the relaxation. So because there is a lot of drivers, they can getting a faster service. The main reason they will get the faster service.
I think thank you, Mr. Zai. I think you've asked my question or answered my question there. And I just like to follow up to Councillor Knox's comment. How onerous is it to get a class 4? I mean, is it a cost? Is it a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of time? Why would somebody not want to take that step to get a class 4 if they want to be a driver?
Because the big issue, the waiting time to get the class 4 is longer. Sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 7 months to get just only appointment to the MPI for the road test. So the waiting time to get the class 4 is very long.
And is that due to just one follow-up question, Your Worship, without belaboring it? Is that COVID related? Once the restrictions get a little bit less and less, do you think that would speed up that time period to get a class 4? What would have it been pre-COVID? Still 7-month waiting period?
I think it's like that right now is running because.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. That's it.
Any further questions from council? Okay. Thank you very much for coming out this evening and presenting to us.
Thank you.
Council had tasked administration with reviewing the local vehicle for hire bylaw a while ago. Does administration have any information on what other communities require as far as licensing goes?
Thank you, Your Worship. So administration has been looking at the local vehicle for hire bylaw based on some feedback from the taxi cab industry in terms of rider safety and driver safety. So we have been looking at what other communities have done in that regard, and we're looking to bring forward some considerations for council in the future. Based on the delegation coming forward, I did check in with a few other communities. You're absolutely correct that Winnipeg does allow for a class 5 driver. In terms of other peer communities throughout Manitoba, I did check in with Winkler, Brandon, Selkirk, Thompson, and Morden. All of those communities do require a class 4 license to operate local vehicle for hire in their bylaws. So the City of Portage isn't unusual in its requirement, but it is something, I think, as we look at the entire bylaw, it's definitely something we can bring forward for council consideration in the future.
Okay. Thank you. We'll open the public hearing for second and third readings. This is for bylaw 22-8732. This is Swadisky at 250 5th Avenue Northeast. Is there anyone here to speak to the hearing?
Yes, good evening, and
Good evening.
thank you for taking the time to listen to me. I'm
Did you-
Thomas Sawatsky,
Okay, thank you.
and basically I'm just here to answer any questions if you guys have some. The objective is to rezone 250 5th Avenue from an R1 to an R3 for a development of a multifamily unit.
Did council have any questions for the proponent? Okay, no questions at this time. Thank you. Was there anyone else here to speak to the hearing, for or against? Need a motion to close the public hearing?
Thank you, Your Worship. Be it resolved, and I so move that the public hearing for bylaw 22-8732, Sawatsky to 55th Avenue Northeast, zoning amendment PC 322 now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay, council, in front of you, you'll have a report to council. Attached to the report will be a Schedule A showing the actual drawing of the location that we're talking about. There'll be a sketch as well that shows it in relationship to all the surrounding streets. And there's also the amended bylaw if it passes. So, with that said, report from the Planning Economic Development Committee, and of course it's a rezoning application for the applicant Thomas Sawatsky, and what he'd like to do is to rezone that area from an R1 to an R3 residential multifamily zone, as you previously heard. As per the Planning Act, and after considering the results of the public meeting, council within 90 days may choose one of 3 actions to deal with the proposed amending bylaw. First reading of this bylaw was given March the 14th, 2022, to commence the processes defined in the Planning Act in considering this application. There has been no changes from the original report, so I don't think we need to review the entire thing. I think council's already done that. The background we just know is that the property in question is 265-266 Plan 29, and once again, to rezone it from an R1 to an R3. One thing to point out, it does fit within the development plan policy when you're talking about things like the housing mix and affordability, the housing supply, and of course, very important, the infill development. As of this writing, since then, there have been no written objections to the proposed rezoning scheme, and of course, there were no objections tonight. Documents have been circulated to provincial departments and agencies, and there were no objections, and the provincial planning recommended approval of the zoning bylaw amendment as well. So, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the application to rezone the land known as 255th Avenue Northeast and legally described as lots 265, 266, Plan 29, Parish of Portage la Prairie, from R1 residential single-family zone to R3 residential multiple family zone, and that the bylaw 22-8732 be read a second time.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And with that carried, and I so move that bylaw number 22-8732 be read a third time, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Okay, we're going to move right into committee. Tonight, Finance, Legislative and Property Committee, Councillor Knox for Councillor Budds.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from your Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee this evening.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council had brought this forward in committee at last council meeting, and it was in relationship to a proposal to subdivide. So the consideration of the application, as we talked about last time, was to subdivide 2 lots. He wants to go from a current holding of 507.37 meters and break it down into 2 equal lots of 253.68 meters. Does fit in with the planning development plan, and of course there are a couple of conditions which I'll get to in just a second. But the Portage la Prairie Planning District Plan Policy 10.3 generally supports the subdivision proposal, which states, and it goes on to talk about the infill development, and you'll see 7 points that it falls within that category. If we do approve this this subdivision, it will also require a variation order, and I assume that would come to council after. Those variation orders are as follows. It would require front yard variation order to minimum requirements from 7.5 meters to 1.22, a side yard variation to vary the minimum requirement from 1.5 to 1.01 meter, and a rear yard variation order would also be required to vary the minimum requirement from 7.5 to 1.25. Some of the comments, of course, the right-of-ways and the easements, Manitoba Hydro would like require an easement for it. The planning district recommends approval with conditions that variation orders, of course, be applied for. And the land titles would have the 2-lot plan of subdivision as required. All other department agencies had passed around to. There have been no comments or concerns. Community and Regional Planning does recommend the approval of the subdivision, subject to the variation orders listed above that I previously read. You will also see the sketches there for your information as well. I think in addition to the site map, which is like a satellite picture. So, with that said, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the subdivision of Lot 10, Plan 31190 PLTO in RL 68 and 69, Parish of Portage la Prairie, into 2 equal lots of 253.68 meters squared from the present holding of 507.37 meters squared, of course, subject to the conditions being met.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that's the end of my report, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Service Committee, Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from Community Services this evening.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from Waterworks Committee.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Meyer again.
Thank you, Your Worship. And there's nothing from the Transportation Committee at this point in the agenda.
Thank you. And our youth member of council is here this evening. Any news that we should know about from our youth counselor?
Not right now, but next month.
Okay, thank you. And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing formal on the agenda. I just wanted to make note that the fire department, they held their bike sale on Saturday. It was a well-attended event. They hadn't had it since 2019, so that was exciting. They raised over $4,000 for the burn fund, but one exciting thing that happened was that their social club, in the beginning, they purchased 3 bikes from the social club and presented them to a new family from Ukraine here to help them become comfortable in our city. So well done to the fire department and all the guys there, and great money raised for the burn fund.
Okay, thank you for that. We have no deferred business this evening. We have a number of items of new business. First item of new business is the letter of resignation. This is a council vacancy. This is Finance Legislative Committee. Councillor Knox for Councillor Buds, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This isn't always the favorite report to be reading, but what the issue is tonight is that we have to talk about accepting a letter of resignation and determine if a by-election should be held to fill a vacant position with council. So with the recent resignation of Councillor Melissa Draycott, a position on council has been vacant. With respect to by-elections, Clause 105.1 of the Municipal Act states that subject to Section 102, vacancy after an election, a council must hold a by-election to fill a vacancy on the council as soon as it is reasonably possible unless a vacancy occurs in the 6 months before the next general election, or the vacancy occurs in the 12 months before the next general election, and the remaining members are a majority of the number of members comprising of council and decide not to hold a by-election. The next municipal election will be held on October 26, 2022. Members of council have discussed this vacancy and are willing to cover Councillor Draycott's duties and responsibilities until that time. So it is the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie accept the letter of resignation from Councillor Melissa Draycott, and that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie decide not to hold a by-election as per Clause 105.1b of the Municipal Act.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And just following that, there is Councillor Draycott's letter of resignation that's included for you to peruse, and also it has been made public through the media if people want to read that information as well, and on the city Facebook page. That so ends my report.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. Next item of new business is the first reading of amending bylaw 22-8737. This is Phase 1 of Saskatchewan Avenue West project. This is Finance Committee. Tonight, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the issue this evening is to obtain approval for amending bylaw 22-8737, a bylaw to authorize borrowing for 2022, the second year of Phase 1 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project. So an analysis is the City of Portage la Prairie commenced Phase 1 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project in 2021. Phase 1 will replace and upgrade the utility infrastructure, water and sewer piping between 4th Street West and Elm Street. This project is funded under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program through a combination of federal, provincial governments, and up to $6 million in municipal borrowing by the city. The city's cost of the 2022's work on Phase 1 is projected at $842,000. Phase 1 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project is expected to be completed in 2022. The Municipal Board approved the total borrowing for Phase 1 of this project on April 6, 2021, and amending bylaws are used for each debt advance of these funds, which confirms the actual payments and rate of borrowing for the specific advance. So tonight, the recommendation, and I so move that bylaw number 22-8737, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie to procure $842,000 in municipal borrowing for Phase 1 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project, be given first reading.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
Thank you, Your Worship, and now it will go to the Municipal Board for approval before we bring it back. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item of new business is the first reading of amending bylaw 2022-8738. This is Phase 2 Saskatchewan Avenue West project. Again, this is Finance Committee.
That's me,
It's Councillor Knox.
Councillor Knox today. Perfect. My apologies here. Okay. So, the issue is to obtain approval for amending bylaw 22-8738, a bylaw to authorize borrowing for 2022, the first year of Phase 2 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project. The City of Portage la Prairie will commence Phase 2 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project in 2022. Phase 2 of this project includes new land drainage systems, updating paved avenue, installing climate-friendly infrastructure, paths and greenery, sidewalks, and appropriate parking spaces. This project is funded under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program as well, through a combination of the federal, provincial governments, and up to $13.739 million in municipal borrowing by the city. The city's cost of the 2022 work on Phase 1 is projected at $4.091 million. Phase 2 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project is expected to be completed in 2024. The Municipal Board approved the combined total of $13.739 million borrowing for Phase 2 of this project on February 4th, 2022. Amending bylaws are used for each debt advance of these funds, which confirms the actual payments and rate of borrowing for the specific advance. So it is the recommendation, and I so move, that bylaw number 22-8738, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie to procure $4,491,000 in municipal borrowing for Phase 2 of the Saskatchewan Avenue West project, be given first reading.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on this motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next, I have new business is the March building reports, and this is for information. This is City Planning and Economic Development. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Worship. You know, this is always one of my favorite parts of any meeting of the month, and I know that there was a news report that was done by the planning district, and I certainly just want to briefly add to it. Just in obviously we have both the city and the RM report separate, but of course we always kind of refer to the combined building report as we look at it from a regional perspective. So permits, of course, last year were significant in the number for 60. Even though we're not there, I think permits are down, but I think the interesting thing to note is that the values have been fairly stable. We were at 7.9 million last year at this time. We're at 6.3 million this year. I know that part of that is for the city garage? Utility building, sorry, the city utility building. So I know that that was a significant project, and I just want to point out it really is nice to see that we still got $4.8 million in new commercial, even though that the utility building was a part of that. It's just nice to see that the construction and so on is going on. And just as looking at a crystal ball, I certainly see the future of this thing happening and starting to look a little bit up as well. So that's pretty much the report, and I'm really looking forward to what next month brings. That's it.
Councillor Meyer. Next, I have new business is the proposal to subdivide part of Lot 3, Plan 24045, PLTO RL 69 6651012, Manitoba Limited. And this is City Planning and Economic Development. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you again, Your Worship. Of course, to the Planning and Economic Development Committee. This is a piece of new business. And of course, it's a proposal to subdivide. So the issue is the consideration of the application to subdivide 1.4 acres from the present holdings of 4.9 acres. The applicant, and you can see the map there for your reference, proposes to subdivide a piece of it, or 1.4 acres from his existing full 4.9 acres, and he does that, or wants to do that, in order to sell that lot to a prospective purchaser. So the application is consistent with the development plan. It does meet provincial criteria for a minor subdivision, and it enables it to be given conditional approval without requiring an interdepartmental circulation or planning report. And that's, of course, is per section of the Planning Act. Council approval, though, is required prior to completing other conditions within the subdivision process. So the community and regional planning have conditionally approved the subdivision, and it's the administrative recommendation at this time, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the subdivision of part of Lot 3, Plan 24045, PLTO and RL 69, Parish of Portage la Prairie, into a 1.4 acre lot from his present holdings of 4.9 acres, which is owned by 6651012 Manitoba Limited, to sell to a prospective purchaser subject to conditions being met.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions, comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Next, I have new business is the testing of potential lead concentrations. This is for information, and this is Waterworks Committee. And tonight, that's Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Worship. Some definite interesting information here and a little bit of a call to some of our residents. So the province of Manitoba's Office of Drinking Water, working closely with public health, is requiring cities with a population over 10,000 to conduct lead sampling at residential homes. The city of Portage la Prairie is required to sample 40 residential locations to test for lead in drinking water. This is in addition to the city's current self-administered lead and metals testing and mediation program that has been in place for several years. So the city is seeking volunteers to test the main drinking water tap in their homes. A majority of these samples will need to be obtained from homes built before 1975 and preferably before 1950, as there is a higher potential for those household water connections, service lines, and fixtures to contain lead. Some newer homes may have lead solder and more rarely plumbing fixtures made with lead-containing alloy. Therefore, a small percentage of samples can be obtained from newer homes. Homes with confirmed lead services will be prioritized. The city is also interested in sampling from homes that operate home-based daycares. Homes must not have a water softener or an inline filtration system connected to the tap where the sample is to be taken. It's important to know for homeowners who sign up, water testing kits complete with sample bottles and instructions will be dropped off at participants' homes at no cost to the homeowner. City staff will retrieve the samples once complete. Homeowners can conduct the sampling themselves, or arrangements can be made for city staff to take the sample. Results of the samples will be shared with the homeowner. Results will also be posted on the city's website and in the annual report. However, the homeowner's occupant's name and specific address will not be made public. It's important to also know that if the city does not receive enough volunteers, homes with suspected lead services will be contacted directly. If you are interested in having your home included in the list of potential sampling locations, please contact our operations department at 204-239-8346 by May 31st. Also, if you have any questions about this and want to learn more, you can talk to our Water Treatment Division Manager, Jared Smith. You can reach him at 204-239-8373. There's also, of course, lots more information on our city's website. So just go there and Google. So ends my request for samplers.
Thank you, Councillor Knox. Next item and last item of new business this evening is the award tender for Saskatchewan Avenue sidewalk reconstruction. This is Transportation Committee. Tonight, Councillor Meyer.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and it's always exciting to do this, and if I'm not mistaken, I also believe that this is the last portion of the Saskatchewan Avenue sidewalk reconstruction that needs to be done, so it'll certainly put a complete to the project. So the issue is to award the tender for the 2022 Saskatchewan Avenue sidewalk reconstruction from 3rd Street East to 5th Street East and 2nd Street West to 4th Street West. Now, you'll see that the company, so the background here is the tender was advertised in Construction Association of Rural Manitoba, Winnipeg Construction Association, Merck's, and the city webpage. There were 9 digital RFPs to 9 contractors. The tender did close on April the 26th. So I know we just passed our new sustainability factor for awarding of these tenders. So this tender has followed the procurement process that incorporates sustainable factors. Ratings are based on a total possible 100 points, awarded with 10 points for the sustainability factors and 90 points for the pricing. So as the per new procurement policy, the revised 4 points per question scoring scale was used to evaluate the sustainability factors questions. So it's important to note that the evaluation does not consider factors such as experience, qualifications, ability to perform the work, nor past performance. So with that said, there were 3 companies that did bid on it. The first one, J.R. Ross Construction and Landscaping, bidding price was $488,439 with 96.10 points. You can see the other 2 as well in there. So the contract will be complete the reconstruction of the remaining paving stone sidewalks in the downtown area. So they're going to take those out and put in a new concrete sidewalk, and I think the other ones look awesome. Doesn't say that in the report, but they really do. Near the intersections, colored stamped concrete will use to be maintained the downtown aesthetic, and they will get rid of the overgrown ash trees and are replaced with more size-appropriate Ming Amur cherry trees. So the good point is that the 2022 budget has $650,000 for downtown sidewalk improvements, with the J. Ross Construction and Landscaping Limited's bid of $488,439, including taxes, to replace the sidewalks on the area we just discussed. The remaining $184,000 could be used or will be used for contingency and to purchase new flower planters and benches. So, with that said, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie award the Saskatchewan Avenue sidewalk reconstruction from 3rd Street East to 5th Street East and 2nd Street West to 4th Street West for 22 Ops 017 to J. Ross Construction and Landscaping Limited for the price of $465,180 net of GST.
Moved by Councillor Meyer and seconded by Councillor Knox. Any questions or comments? Councillor Knox?
Sure. I'm just curious, this name has not come across before, I don't think, for me, so just maybe a question for administration as to, do we know of any other municipalities maybe they've done some work in that it's just a new company. Curious.
Mr. Pito?
Through your worship to Councillor Knox, I will actually ask our Director of Operations to speak to that question.
Yeah, we haven't dealt with them in Portage before. Sorry. Yeah, we haven't dealt with them in Portage since I've been in this position, but they do a lot of work in the city of Winnipeg and surrounding municipalities. So they're based out of the city of Winnipeg.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. We'll move into old business. Old business is the 2022 financial plan and tax levy bylaw. This is 22-8735. This is for second and third readings. This is Finance Committee. Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is old business, but I think it is one that a lot of people pay a lot of attention to in our community, so I'm going to take the time to go through it again. So City Council approved the 2022 budget for the City of Portage la Prairie on February 14th, 2022. The tax levy bylaw is comprised of the 2022 budget in the financial plan and sets the mill rates needed to raise the tax dollars. The 10-year capital plan and debt management plan are also part of the financial plan. The 2022 budget estimates relies on $12.9 million on property taxes to meet all the expenditures not recovered by other revenues. The city remains committed to investing in our city to improve and enhance our infrastructure to meet the needs of our citizens. The 2022 financial plan includes spending of over $32 million for general capital and $26 million for utility capital projects, including the year's capital expense for the Saskatchewan Avenue West project. The city has been able to maintain regular 2022 property taxes at no increase by funding increased expenses from our expanding tax base. The school division and provincial education support levy decreased for 2022. Unfortunately, what we haven't been able to cover is the increase required for the RCMP member unionization. The increase in operating expenses, $500,000 for this purpose, will increase property taxes by 4.2%. With the decreases for the school division and the property education support levy, the net increase to residential property owners' taxes will be 2.13%, and for non-residential properties, the net increase will be 1.43%. Also, we just have a breakdown here of for a $250,000 assessment residential property and a $500,000 assessment residential property. Important to look at. The city's debt management plan is incorporated into the enhanced 10-year capital plan. Details regarding this plan for funding general and utility projects are identified in the 2022 financial plan presentation document. Based on regulatory requirement that a municipality's debt can't exceed 7% of its total property's proportioned assessment and debt payments can exceed 20% of its annual gross revenue, the maximum debt level for the city is $44 million and the annual debt payments can exceed $4.3 million. With 2022 remaining debt outstanding of $7.5 million, $4.9 million in additional debt to be exercised in 2022, and total annual payments of $2.1 million, the city is well within its maximum requirements. So it is the recommendation, and I so move, that the bylaw number 228735, being a bylaw of the City of Portage la Prairie to authorize the levying and raising of property taxes for school and municipal purposes for the year ending December 31st, 2022, be given a second reading.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. Any questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried.
And that bylaw number 22-8735 be given third and final reading, finally passed, signed, and sealed.
Moved by Councillor Knox and seconded by Councillor Meyer. All those in favor of the motion? And that's carried. That concludes our business for council. Council is adjourned at 6:45 PM, and we're going to move right into committee. And we're going to call committee to order at 6:45 PM. First up is Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Councillor Knox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee this evening.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, next council meeting, I'm going to be bringing forth in new business a couple of proposals to subdivide. The first one, as you can see there, is a proposal to subdivide part of Lot 105 in the parish of Portage la Prairie. So the applicant would like to take actually the entire 8.2 acres that he has and turn it into 3 lots for residential purposes. My understanding, it is even though it's in the city, it's rural residential as they consider it, and it does fall within the development plan. The only question I would ask, or I miss maybe for clarification, if I could, I'll bring this up first and then I'll go back. Areas designed as rural residential development plan are intended primarily for residential uses such as single-family dwellings and cottage dwellings, as well as compatible recreational uses. And the subdivision, as I mentioned, generally conforms to the development plan policy. I just noticed that in Lot 1, Lot 2, and Lot 3, we've got them in meters squared, but in the issue, we show them as just acres. So I'm going to assume that the 2.1 acres is the 8,093 meters. The 3.2 acres is the 12,949 meters squared, and the 2.9 acres is, again, the 11,735. Is there a chance I could get a clarification on that?
I'm going to ask Jocelyn, do you have some information on that?
Well, the lots, on the drawing, they're numbered, and they're also numbered in the report, so you can match them up that way.
Okay. Okay, I was just wondering why we have it down meter squared here and we've got it acres up there, but I'm going to assume that they correlate, is what I would guess it to be. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for my own sake. So, council, that's one thing I'll be bringing forward. Excuse me. For council's consideration the next meeting. In addition to that, there's another proposal to subdivide, and you'll see the you'll see the site map there as well for your information, and this one is to consider in the application to subdivide 2 lots, which is a total of 660 meters squared and roughly similar sizes out about a meter. So this applicant would like to propose to subdivide the following in 2 lots for residential single-family home, and each lot, of course, contains a single-family dwelling. The lots are already serviced with municipal services and piped water. They also do have access to a municipal road. Once again, it talks about the development plan, the neighborhood policy area, so it generally fits into that. All of the information is there. This one, if council does pass it, there is be a number of variations that would have to come forward as well, so I'd like council to take that in consideration too. So that's coming up next council meeting as well for your information, and that'd be the end of my report in committee, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Community Service Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from the Community Service Committee.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from the Waterworks Committee.
Thank you. And Transportation Committee, Councillor Meyer again.
Thank you again, Your Worship. The Transportation Committee has nothing in committee tonight.
And Public Safety Committee, Councillor Knox.
Thank you, Your Worship. Nothing from Public Safety.
Thank you. That concludes our business in committee at this time. And before we adjourn, I just want to thank Councillor Meyer and Councillor Knox for stepping up big time this evening and sharing that workload. So committee is adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Thank you for coming out, everybody.